What's up? Today I'd love to share with you the two ideas that can literally double your strength and help you to get to the 2000 rating in no time. Recently, I've been analyzing the results and the progress of our students, and I found these two ideas that helped a lot of them to break through, so I think that you can benefit from this just as well. I've set up the first position to illustrate it. It is black to move. Imagine that you're playing this position as black. It's your turn. How would you play here as black? Please think about it. Generally speaking, what I've noticed about the progress of chess players, and maybe you can relate to this as well, is when you just start learning chess, initially you gain knowledge and your rating goes up, and that's fairly smooth. But at some point, usually people hit the plateau, whether it's 1000 or 1200 or 1500 or even higher 1800. But after that, they reach a certain level and they can't really progress any further. Their rating goes up and down a little bit around that benchmark, but there is never a breakthrough, okay? And these two ideas that I'd love to, share with you today, hopefully will help you to break through and to really get to the next level in chess, okay? Now, speaking about this position, what we can see right here is that black has this bishop and the queen, and they theoretically are ready to team up and to deliver this checkmate on g2. Man, that really seems to be like potentially a big problem for white. Of course, there is a challenge. There is white's knight here that defends this square currently. And when you look at this, you think, well, I just need to deflect this knight somehow, and then I'll be able to just play queen g2 checkmate. So how do I deflect this knight? And then you may start thinking about moves of your knight, maybe to d5 or maybe to f5, somewhere there. Let's say knight d5, an exchange, and after this exchange, you think, okay, then I'll play queen g2 checkmate. Something like that. Or let's put it back. Let's say instead of knight d5, you think, okay, let me play knight f5. Looks even stronger. Now I keep this diagonal open. And if white just captures here, good luck, queen g2 checkmate. Cool. And if you think that way, you're likely to play knight f5. The problem, though, is white doesn't have to take here. In fact, knight f5 is not even a major threat, because if I just play any random move for white here, knight takes e3 does not win the game, because after pawn takes, the queen starts controlling this square, so you can't win anymore. Anyway, and of course white can do something else as well. Instead of rook c1, white can, let's say, play d5 and just block these diagonal altogether. So that doesn't work. And, that's kind of what often prevents people from progressing further. When you see an idea and our brain wants to persevere and to find a way to accomplish this goal, to achieve this goal, it's normal, and perhaps in life it is helpful to, persevere and to find a way through. But in chess, that's not really how you think about it. In chess, it's much more beneficial to think in terms of what attacking options do I have. So you ask yourself, how can I go forward and attack something? And you're on the lookout of these different options available for you, and you then evaluate which one works best. And it's not really just about candidate moves and calculation. It's more of this shift in the mindset that you're not trying to push a certain idea that you think and that you wish to work. It's kind of the wishful thinking. We wish this idea to work and we try to push it even if it doesn't. But instead you just ask yourself, okay, how can I go forward and attack? And you're on the lookout. Okay, maybe knight f5, maybe knight d5, maybe pawn h4, h5, h4, but that doesn't do much. Rook b6 is an attacking move as well. Well, that hits the rook, it hits the bishop, and we're ready for the rook lift. It can go over here and join the attack. Well, that's pretty strong. And moreover, if the bishop goes back, in addition to just playing rook h6, which is not too bad either, here you may realize that you've got actually a forced checkmate. Queen takes h2. And after king takes, this rook h6 now comes deadly, because this bishop and the rook come together, and after king g1, rook h1 is just a checkmate. Now, if I were to tell you that you can deliver checkmate in 3 moves, you'd probably notice this combo. But because initially we were so occupied with thinking about how to push that, queen to g2 checkmate, you could easily overlook this idea. Once again, to sum things up, the idea is that you should always be on the lookout for attacking moves. And you gotta ask yourself this question, how can I go forward and attack something in an opponent's position? But there is one major misconception here as well. Sometimes if you play an online blitz, you can see that your opponent is just trying to attack you boldly. And let me show you some extreme example of that. Let's say you're playing black and your opponent goes something like this, bishop c4 and queen h5, trying to go for this scholar's checkmate. And you play g6 now, queen f3. Attacking this square once again, and if you block this, white goes, okay, let me play g4, g5, and as the knight goes away, I'll play queen takes f7. Sometimes your opponents who think that they play aggressively try to go in the most brutal aggressive fashion, but they forget the main rule of the attack. The golden rule of the attack says that the attackers should outnumber the defenders, and only then your attack is successful. In this case, for instance, white has two pieces in the game, the queen and the bishop, and black developed two knights. The queen is also somewhat involved. It defends the knight. The bishop is also somewhere around, right, ready to cover the king if necessary. Therefore, definitely white cannot outnumber black in this attack, and this attack is doomed to fail. By the way, if you don't know how to do that, I've got a separate video about that, how to, refute these kind of quick attacks. You may check this out later. So that's not how you should play aggressively, and how you should do this, let me share with you. Here's another example of the game between Korobov against Vakatura. It's white to move. And we've got a more or less standard middle game position, or rather late opening position. It's white to move. Now, how do you play here as white? There are clearly different options, a lot of them, in fact, that white may consider. But here's the question that is a key guideline idea. How do I go forward and attack something? And if possible, you do want to go into opponent's half of the board, because then you potentially can cause, the most damage. And if you ask yourself that question, you narrow down the options, because you don't need to consider, rook e1 or doubling rooks along the d file or anything like that. If you're asking yourself, how can I go to opponent's half of the board? Well, knight e5, which attacks this pawn, is like the only option really, and you just play it. It's strong and it's simple. Black played queen a6, trying to guard this pawn. Now it's defended twice and it's attacked twice, therefore white cannot capture it. And white again asked himself the same question: how can I go forward to opponent's half of the board and create some threats? And he played queen h5. This move does not seem like an attacking move at first, but it actually potentially x-rays this vulnerable knight on c5. So white maybe can, take here and then win the knight that way. So it is actually an attacking move. Black played pawn to f6. Now, how do you play here? Actually, really, think about this for a second. How would you play here if it's your move to play? Like a lot of players, if the knight is attacked, they just go back, right? That's the usual response. But I hope that now you'll have the shift in your mindset, because the right question is, how do I go forward and attack, right? Not how do I go back and play a passive move. That's not how you do that. Of course, not always you have an attacking move, but you should always be on the lookout. And if it's available, you'll find some. A little bit of a spoiler, in the game, white played rook d8, which is a pretty spectacular tactics. But before we dive into this, just to mention that even if, let's say, you can't find rook d8, at least, instead of moving the knight back, you gotta move it forward, knight g6, and you hit the rook, and you also open up this attack. So after pawn takes and queen takes c5, yes, it's not completely winning for white, but still you're maintaining your pressure, you keep attacking, and it's still tough for black. So that's as I mentioned previously, the students that incorporated this way of thinking on a regular basis in their games, they really increased their rating significantly, and they even bypassed the 2000 rating that they were aiming at initially. And if you look at even at the top level guys, the modern prodigies, something like Firuja, that's how he plays chess, right? He just goes forward, attacks, and he keeps his pieces engaged. Keeping in mind the golden rule of attack, that the attacker should outnumber the defender. So you do want to bring up your pieces and keep attacking. And if you look at a lot of his games, that's just how he plays, and he's one of the top players in the world. By the way, if you have the same goal to achieve the 2000 rating level, then the students that I was talking about is the students who enrolled into the course 3 Steps to 2000 ELO, one of the courses that I'm most proud of. It produced a lot of strong players already. So if you're curious, you can click the link below the video and check this out. Now, in the game, let's take this back. Korobov found an even stronger option. Instead of knight g6, white's got another move on black's half of the board, rook d8. Really spectacular shot. Now, black can take either this one or this one, but in both cases there are some problems. If rook takes, then it vacates this square, and white can go there. After king goes, there is queen e7, we keep attacking, and the knight is ready to join the party, and it's pretty tough for black. In fact, white wins here. So, for example, something like bishop d7, knight check, and we take the rook, and still, these both guys are attacking the lonely king. The knight on c5 is also somewhat hanging, so it is tough, and white wins here. In the game, after rook d8, black opted for the other one, pawn takes e5, but after this exchange, white found a way to engage the rook and played pawn f4. Again, we don't want to attack with a single queen, we want to engage more pieces, right? So pawn f4. Want to outnumber the defenders. And now we've got an ideal situation where For example, after bishop d7 and pawn takes e5, now we've got two attackers versus basically a lonely king. And for that reason, white is easily winning. And after king g8, well, actually let this be our puzzle of the day. Just white to play and win, and if you can find the winning solution here for white, please write it down in the comments below. All the resources that I've mentioned throughout this video will be in the description below the video. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask them in the comments below, and I'll talk to you soon.